The battlefield of Geonosis was chaos. Blaster fire, explosions, and the hum of lightsabers filled the air. Jango Fett, Mandalorian bounty hunter and template for the Grand Army of the Republic, fought alongside Count Dooku's separatists. However, he had underestimated the Jedi Master Mace Windu. Jango tried to take on one of the most powerful Jedi in the Order and even tried to snatch his purple lightsaber from the ground, but Mace was too fast. Using the Force, he summoned the weapon back to his hand and ignited it as Jango started rapidly shooting at him. Mace ran toward his Mandalorian attacker and the lightsaber nearly claimed his life. But Jango was ready. As Windu's blade came down, Jango's jetpack, damaged moments earlier due to being battered as one of the arena beasts trampled over him, sputtered to life just long enough for him to evade the killing blow. Before blasting off into the air, Mace's lightsaber slashed across his chest plate in what would have been a fatal blow had the armor not been made out of Beskar. Jango landed a short distance away from Mace, firing a wrist rocket at the Jedi and forcing him into a defensive retreat. Luckily, more and more battle droids poured into the arena, overwhelming Mace and all the other Jedi. Jango used this as a distraction to make his own escape with his son, Boba. Jango knew he had been reckless. The Jedi were too powerful, and he had almost left Boba an orphan. No more. He took Boba to a remote Mandalorian enclave in the Outer Rim, far from the war and far from the Republic and the Separatists. The Mandalorians were just that, Mandalorians. They didn't care or want to get involved in the outside war, or at least not until it came knocking on their door. For now, the system was safe. There, Jango taught Boba the way of the Mandalorian warrior, shaping him into more than just a bounty hunter. He trained Boba to lead without fear and lead a life of honor and dedication. One that would not only make Jango proud, but all of the Mandalorian people. Meanwhile, the Clone Wars continued without him. With Jango Fett having returned to Mandalore, Kamino lost their prime genetic source. While they could make his DNA stretch out for a few years, it wasn't gonna last forever. Eventually, the Republic's clone production slowed, forcing them to recruit non-clone soldiers. The Jedi, still trapped in a galactic war, struggled even more to maintain order. Non-clone troopers were more prone to fear and deserting the army, and they did not take orders as well or as kindly as the clone troopers, all of whom would follow orders with much less of a fuss. But while this switch to recruitment instead of cloning kept the Republic safe and protected, it would also eventually prove to be a massive spanner in the works of Darth Sidious's master plan for the galaxy. 3 years into the war, Jango made his grand return, not as a hired gun, but as a leader. The Mandalorians, fractured since the fall of Concord Dawn and Death Watch's rise, needed a figure to unite them. Jango was that figure. With his reputation and skill, he gathered Mandalorian warriors from scattered clans, pulling them together and forging them into a mercenary army willing to fight for the highest bidder. The training was brutal, but under the watchful eye of Jango and Boba, the Mandalorian army became a dangerous player that unleashed themselves onto the galaxy and threw themselves into the heart of the war. But Jango had learned. The Jedi and Sith were both manipulators, using soldiers and pawns to further their war. He saw his own clones being mercilessly slaughtered by droids, and he was disgusted that they were being used in such a way. He knew that his DNA was going to be used to create an army, and while the clones were undoubtedly good, they weren't Jango. He didn't have his skills, experience, and know-how. He would not let Mandalorians be pawns in the same way. Instead, he formed the Mandalorian Syndicate, a neutral force refusing to fight for either side. Yet, both the Republic and the Separatists sought their allegiance. This relatively small but lethally tough army could help swing the war for one side or the other. Darth Sidious, still orchestrating the war from the shadows, saw the danger in Jango's return. He could not allow the Mandalorians to remain independent. He sent Count Dooku to offer Jango a place at his side again, but Jango refused, saying that he chose to not serve either the Jedi or the Sith. His outlook had changed since he had first been recruited by Dooku, and now Jango saw things far more clearly. He saw that the war was a sham, and a smokescreen for something bigger, but the truth of the matter was that he didn't really care, as long as it didn't affect him. When the Republic turned its attention to Mandalore, where Maul had taken control, Jango saw an opportunity. Instead of Ahsoka Tano leading the assault, it was Jango's Mandalorians who fought to reclaim their world. If he wanted to take their planet back, though, and regain complete control for the Mandalorian people, Jango would have to face Maul himself. He knew it would not be an easy fight. His close call with Mace Windu stuck in his mind, but he had learned from it. Maul would not fight with the same honorable tactics as a Jedi, though, so Jango had to be prepared. He got many additional armor pieces, as well as different weapons that would help him take down Maul. When the time came to confront the former Sith apprentice, Maul put up a good fight, but it was via the use of whistling bird missiles and a poison-tipped vibroblade that he brought down the Zabrak tyrant, using his gauntlet-mounted flamethrower to ensure that the demon-like creature was truly dead and would not come back once more. Through this win, Jango proved once and for all that Mandalorians did not need Jedi or Sith to determine their fate. While Jango had violently taken the role of leader, he also knew that the planet did not truly belong to him. It belonged to all Mandalorians. The Republic was forced to recognize Mandalore's independence. Sidious, furious at the loss of control, fast-tracked Order 66. If he could take out the Jedi, then he could focus on Jango, Mandalore, and the growing threat of the Mandalorian army. But when Palpatine sent his infamous command, not all clones obeyed. They looked to Jango as a kind of father figure, and they saw how independent and strong-willed he was. So when the order came to kill the Jedi, a vast majority of the clone army adopted the mantra, "What would Jango do?" And it seems that most of them believed that Jango wouldn't just kill comrades that he had worked alongside for years for no good reason. While several Jedi were in fact killed, the majority of the Order survived. With the Jedi not entirely wiped out, and with Mandalore standing strong, the formation of the Empire was not as seamless. The Jedi were still around, the clone troopers were far too independent and out of control, and Jango and Boba, who is now a true warrior in his own right, led their forces against the rising Empire. While the Emperor still turned Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader, he faced a lot more hurdles than he did in the official canon timeline. The remnants of the Jedi and the Mandalorians allied against him, creating a galactic civil war much earlier than expected. Boba, raised with a different purpose, stood beside his father as a leader, not a lone bounty hunter. The name Fett became synonymous with resistance. The galaxy, once dominated by Sith and Jedi, now had a third force, the Mandalorians. Sure, they weren't Force-sensitive, but one of the reasons both Jedi and Sith were so wary of Mandalorians was because they had proven to be a dangerous and capable faction in the past. They had even developed the Darksaber, a weapon that was not only wielded by the leader of Mandalore, i.e. Jango, but a sword that was also lightsaber-resistant and had slain many Force users in the past. The Clone Wars lasted years, long after the formation of the Empire. Palpatine used it as a distraction, to keep people from opposing his growing empire. Ironically, though, the Empire was never as strong as it had been in the original timeline. Recruitment was slow, and with money and resources being poured into the war, Palpatine couldn't truly secure his new empire. But his biggest problem was that with the Mandalorian Syndicate and Jedi fighting back, the Emperor's rule crumbled far sooner. He was eventually killed by his own apprentice, Darth Vader, who then turned his attention to Mandalore and the persistent threat of Jango and his army. In a climactic battle in the ruins of Kamino, Jango Fett finally faced Darth Vader. One-on-one, the warrior leader of the Mandalorians versus the Sith leader of the Empire. Jango had learned his lesson from his battles with both Mace and Maul and gave the armored Sith Lord no quarter and no room to strike back. Jango's blaster fired relentlessly, with the Sith Lord batting the blasts away or back at Jango, whose suit harmlessly deflected and absorbed the shots. But no matter how strong of a warrior Jango was and how much experience he had under his belt, Vader's power was unmatched. Using the Force, Vader grabbed Jango's throat across a sprawling landing platform and slowly dragged the choking leader towards him. He stretched out his crimson blade, intending to slowly and deliberately impale Jango on it, but before the Mandalorian ruler reached the weapon, Vader was thrown sideways, rocked by an unexpected attack. Boba flew in, a volley of his own blaster bolts flying at Vader. Jango, now able to breathe again, joined back in with the fight, nailing and sending his jetpack-mounted concussion missile directly at the distracted Sith Lord. It exploded against Vader's chest, ripping him apart and sending his remains plummeting into the oceans of Kamino. Jango thanked his son for saving his life by offering him the Darksaber and therefore the rule of Mandalore. Boba was now the new leader. He was every bit as strong and wise as Jango, and Jango was proud to see his son in such a position. It just proved that Mandalorians were not relics of the past, but the future of the galaxy. With the Sith now gone, and the Jedi willing to let Mandalore and the Mandalorian people live in peace, the galaxy was free, not under Republic rule, but under a new era led by Mandalorians, bounty hunters, and those who refused to kneel. Jango Fett had not just survived Geonosis, he had changed the galaxy for everyone forever.